Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Very well. Thank you, Vidushi. Let's get started. So, we have essentially three more lessons left. Today's lesson, which is a review, and next week, which will also be review. And then the final session will be the examination itself. There's also, between now and then, a written test that you can take in your own time. So the last session will be a face-to-face examination, not more examination, more just a discussion. We're going to go through some things, kind of like a quiz. And then there's the written test, which I will send to all of you to do in your own time. Let's focus on today's review. So, we can see that, remember, the first thing is that the Bhagavad Gita is spoken, excuse me, is spoken on the battlefield. In real time, it is not a philosophical treatise uh, between individuals who essentially have time on their side. They do not. The very nature of the environment in which the Bhagavad Gita is spoken necessitates that Krishna gets to the point quickly in a manner that Arjuna can understand quickly, and in order for Arjuna to use that understanding immediately. Excuse me. So that we always have to have that's the context in which the Bhagavad Gita is given. Bhagavad Gita deals with 5 topics called the Gita Pancha Vishaya. Ishvara, the supreme, Jiva, the living entity, Kala, time, karma, activities, prakriti, nature. Deals with these 5 issues. Again, to show that Krishna is really getting to the point very, very quickly. He's not dealing in esoteric concepts. The reality of the individuals, the time, space, and activities in which these individuals exist. And let's get to the point. That's what Krishna is all about in the Bhagavad Gita. Excuse me. These 5 topics can be further divided into 2 categories. Kshetra and Kshetragya. These 2 categories, dividing these 5 topics into these 2 categories is very, very important because it enables us to understand what has not irrelevance, but what has priority over the other, right? What is of what can be addressed in what times, in what circumstance, and what situations over the other. So these 2 categories of Kshetra and Kshetragya are essential. Kshetra means the body, the field. Kala, time. Karma, activities. Prakriti, material nature. That's Kshetra, that's the field. The common denominator here is temporary, material, subject to all kinds of change. On the other hand, we have Kshetragya, the knowers of the field. These are 2, Ishvara and Jiva. they have in common is that they are spiritual, they are eternal, they are unchanging in terms of they do not change or deteriorate because of time. They are as they are in perpetuity. So we have these two categories. So now when we look at the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita or any Vedic teachings, we can determine whether the teachings are dealing with the field or the knower of the field. And this is important because then we can then prioritize how we're living our life, not to negate one or the other, not to to ignore one over the other, but to recognize that there may be imbalances because we are spirit beings in a material world. We have to have these two in proper balance. Proper balance may not mean 50-50. Proper balance actually may mean 90-10. But there's still harmony in our reality. So there has to be an understanding. Otherwise, what happens is we become too materialistic and we do not develop our spiritual and recognize and acknowledge our spiritual reality, our spiritual identity, or we deny our material reality and for whatever reason simply turn towards what we think is a spiritual realm while negating, ignoring, and causing all kinds of havoc in our material reality. All right. So we have to understand these two categories and make sure we are keeping them properly balanced. So now, the entire Bhagavad Gita, we have the 5 Panchavishaya, we know what's being talked about, the 5 subject matters that Krishna is teaching. We know that these subject matters can be broken into 2 categories, Kshetra, Kshatragya. Now we come to the Bhagavad Gita. Now, what lens through which are we to see and understand the Bhagavad Gita? Very clear, the easiest, the most profound, and the most practical lens is to use the Purusharthas: Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. Forgive me. Remember, the Purusharthas are described, the definition is in the very name itself, Purusha. These are pertaining to the human being. Purusharthas are not applicable to non-humans, not applicable to the animals, bees, birds, so on and so forth. Not applicable. They're applicable for the human being to reach their highest potential. Birds and the bees, they do not have to do anything to reach their highest potential. Their highest potential is mandated by Prakriti, and the birds and the bees are drawn by instinct, by Prakriti to do. A bee is going to do what a bee does. Bee does not have any other choice. Prakriti takes care of the bee living to its full potential. The human beings, the Purusha, we have a choice. We have to choose to live to our highest potential. The reason why the Purusha, and this is why the human life is so very valuable, is because we have this choice. And this choice is essential for love to exist. Without choice, there cannot be love. It simply cannot, it does not exist. The more freedom, the more choice we have, the more love is possible, if one can put it in those terms. So choice is essential. Therefore, we have the Purusharthas. We have to choose to live up to our highest potential in 4 areas. Dharma, the first. Dharma means, often translated as religion, very, not wrong, but a very, very limited view of what Dharma is. Dharma means all of that knowledge, information, not necessarily rules and regulations, but yes, principles of how a person should live in life. The foundational principles. of how a person should live in this world, how a person should also move towards their personal development, their spiritual development, all these very principles of existence. Dharma, basic fundamental principles of existence. Artha means, in the context of the Purusharthas, artha means livelihood. Reality is, in the material world, you have to make a living. Whether this is back in caveman had to go out, slaughter a wildebeest, and drag it home for the family. Up until today, you gotta get up Monday morning, go to work to make a living. Making a living is absolutely part and parcel of being alive in this world. So that's artha. Artha means making a living. Kama means we live in this reality. There is the desire to enjoy. We have material senses. The material senses want to experience pleasure by interacting with the sense objects. That's kama. How do we enjoy life? Then finally, there is moksha, the goal. What are we doing? Why are we even in existence in the first place? Purusha, we're human beings, freedom. When we gain freedom, we can exist at our highest level of potential in the space, in the choice of love. So moksha is the goal, freedom, complete, total freedom from, well, let me break it down further, one by one. So let's go back to Dharma, the four Purusharthas. Now remember, these four Purusharthas are how we look at every single verse in the Bhagavad Gita. We've practiced this before. We pulled out a verse, we looked at it. Is this a Dharma verse, Artha verse, so on and so forth? Dharma, principles of successful living. Now, there are many different dharmas, Nitya Dharma, Sanatan Dharma, Stri Dharma, Pati Dharma, all types of Yuga Dharma, all types of dharmas. Some are in Kshetragya, some are in Kshetra. That's fine. But there are two, as it pertains to the Bhagavad Gita, two dharmas which are essential. The first is Siddharana Dharma. Siddharana means universal. All human beings are to abide by these four principles of Siddharana Dharma. They are Tapa, Socha, Daya, Satyam. Tapa means self-discipline, self-mastery, having agency and control over oneself, one's body, mind, and so on. Shocha means purity. First of all, keeping oneself physically clean, but purity also means purified motives. That means to live in such a way that our motivations are beneficial for ourselves and for other people around us. Our motivations are pure. Our motivation is not to cause harm to another living entity, another living being. So pure motives. Everything we do must be of purified motives, in that we are attempting to achieve the well-being of ourselves and others involved with us, in connection with us. Tapa, Socha. Third is Daya. Daya means compassion. To have the general, similar to Socha, to have the general well-being of others in as much as possible, right? To ensure that that we are not inflicting upon or trespassing upon others. Basic compassion, and to help when we possibly can do so. Then is Sati, or truthfulness. To always, we can get into the details of Satya, but not here. To always make factual statements in as much as we know what the facts are, to express in manners that is not demeaning, discouraging, and constantly criticizing others, part of Satyam. And the third part of Satyam is, again, coming back to this, having a beneficial idea to, when we speak, we always should have the well-being of ourselves and the other person to whom we are speaking or about whom we are speaking in mind, right? Endless gossip about people behind their backs is contrary to the principle of satya, truthfulness. So these are the four principles of Siddhartha Dharma. They are applicable to all human beings, no matter where you come from, no matter what your religion is, no matter what your caste, race, ethnicity, doesn't matter. All human beings are expected to live according to these four principles. And these principles, again, based in Purushartha, they have to be chosen. We have to choose to live up to these four basic principles of the human being. So that's Siddhartha Dharma. Then the second important dharma in this regard is Swadharma. Very, very important, essential. Swadharma is our own nature, our own inclination, our proclivities. So Swadharma has three parts. Body, Swadharma holds in balance, recognizes the nature of three things and holds them in balance. Our body, our physical body, our subtle body, and our spirit identity, our spiritual nature. So our physical body and senses has proclivities. We like this type of food, we like to watch this type of movie, we like to hear these types of songs, music, and so on and so forth. That gives an indication of what our Swadharma is, what is our innate, natural, inclined predisposition, right? Physical senses indicate that. Then our subtle body, mind, intelligence, and ego. We determine this, we understand this by understanding what causes us, what do we find to be humorous? Everyone has a certain type of humor. What do we find to be fearful? What terrorizes us? What inspires us? These types of questions indicate the natural proclivities of our subtle being, our subtle nature. Then there is the soul, the spirit being, the jivatma. The soul has a quality called nityadasa. This nityadasa principle is distinguishing the jivatma from paramatma. The jivatma is you and I, all living creatures, on the one hand. Paramatma is the supreme, or Ishvara. Nityadas is what distinguishes between these two. Nityadas, Nitya means eternal, Dasa means servant. This Nityadas principle is the living into the Jivatma. We always look up to something greater than ourselves. We want to, we naturally aspire, look up to, whether it's a person, whether it's an idea, whether it's a belief system, whatever it is, we always look up to something greater than ourselves that gives us great internal satisfaction when we have this, something toward which we are aspiring. So this aspirational quality is Nityadasa. Ishvara does not have that. Now, very important, this does not mean that Ishvara cannot have that aspirational quality. Ishvara, the Supreme, can do anything, but it is not a distinguishing quality of Ishvara. Ishvara is not impelled to do that. Jivatma, however, it's an intrinsic part of our nature. We cannot exist otherwise. So taking stock of what are those things to which we, taking stock of those things to which we look up to, individuals, ideas, philosophies, whatever it may be, understanding what that is, that's part of our Swadharma. So aggregating all of these aspects of ourselves in these three areas, physical body, subtle body, our spiritual identity, aggregating our understanding of how we move in these three ways and balancing that, existing in that space, that is Swadharma. Okay? Let's go on to artha. Artha means a livelihood. In the context of purusharthas, it means making a living. Very simple. The goal of the human life, purushartha, is freedom, moksha. Our livelihood is a livelihood that does not impede our progress towards moksha. That is defined as artha. A livelihood that does not impede our progress towards moksha. In other words, a livelihood that does not obstruct or is not an obstacle to the four sadhana dharma principles, tapa, socha, daya, sati. A livelihood that is in harmony, that supports our swadharma, who we are, and a livelihood that can be made as an offering to the Supreme. So an offering to the Supreme means we can do it as an offering to Adi Yagya. There are livelihood and occupations that, when they are contrary to the principles of dharma, those types of occupations cannot be offered to the Supreme. Right? We cannot make it as an offering to the Supreme. Only those things that are in harmony with the principles of dharma, that are in accordance with the principles of dharma, those livelihoods, those career paths, those activities, then that livelihood can be offered as a yagya to Adi Yagya, to the Supreme. That is artha. Now we come to kama. Kama is a little more complex because it's very, very an important part of this entire understanding of the Purusharthas. Kama is where our motivations come from. So let's break this down. We are spirit beings. Ananda, bliss, is part and parcel of our spiritual composition. Ananda Maya Bhyasat. This comes from the Vedanta Sutra. Ananda Maya Bhyasat. Ananda Maya, the Ananda nature, the Ananda energy, if you will, is part and parcel of who we are. It is that of which we are made. Ananda. Bliss. The Jivatma. Our desire to experience Ananda, our desire to manifest this natural Ananda within us, that desire, that pure desire, is called Ichcha. All right, so that pure desire to manifest and experience Ananda, that is called Ichcha. However, when we are in this world of matter, prakriti, material nature, an element is thrown into the mix. And this material element is called ahankar. Now, ahankar is two things. Ahankar is an idea, it's a concept, a conditioning, but it's also a material element. Let's talk about the elemental part. In order for the Jivatma to manipulate and live and exist in a world that is matter, ahankar is necessary. Ahankar is what I like to use the example of an engine. You have an engine and then you have the tires. To get the power of the engine to turn the wheels, you need a drive shaft or a transmission. Ahankar is the transmission. Ahankar brings the consciousness of the Jivatma, brings it into the world of matter so that we can manipulate the world of matter. That is ahankar. So we can exist in the world of matter, we need ahankar. So it's a material element. Now it's also a concept. The conceptual part of it is that the Jivatma then takes on this identity that I am matter. I am this body. I am the wheels. Rather than recognizing that we are the engine, we begin to think we're the wheel, right? That is turning. So that's the concept. Ahankar tricks us into thinking that we are the wheel. Now, remember Ichcha? Let's go back to Ichcha. This desire to manifest bliss, of which we are already made, when we are conditioned by ahankar, that itcha manifests as kama. Kama simply means desire. So itcha means desire, kama means desire. What turns itcha, pure itcha, the pure will, the pure desire of the jivatma, becomes polluted by ahankar and therefore manifests as kama. This desire, and kama is a desire to experience happiness by connecting the sense objects, the senses to the sense objects. And you can experience, right? You watch a good movie, you experience sukha. Sukha is a Sanskrit word for the happiness that is experienced when one connects the senses, the eyes, to the sense objects, a movie. So when the senses engage with the sense objects and there is satisfaction or happiness, that is called sukha. So that's what is happening when the jivatma, conditioned by ahankar, believes we are this material body. Our itcha becomes perverted and manifests as a desire to connect the senses with the sense objects. The problem is we do not always have control over the sense objects, nor do we always have control over our senses, right? We get sick. As you can see, I'm getting over a cold myself. We do not have control over these two things, so our experience of sukha is dependent on all kinds of things outside of our control. Ananda is that of which we are intrinsically made and can therefore, it's not dependent upon the acuity of our senses. It depends on our atmagyan, our self-realization. So now in order to transfer kama back into itcha, so to speak, buddhi yoga. That's how kama can be converted back into, or purified back into, itcha is buddhi yoga. In other words, we do not have the ahankar does not condition us to kama. The ahankar is pure. We still use the ahankar to work in this world, to live in this world, to exist in this world, but it does not condition us to this belief that I am my body. That's what buddhi yoga does. When we are beyond this conditioning, and we have the realization that we are Jivatma, that is what buddhi yoga does. That's what all spiritual processes are to do. All yoga processes, all spiritual processes is all about coming to our real identity. All right? Let's feel free to chime in at any point, but I'm going to move along a little faster. We're past the 30-minute mark. Finally, we come to moksha. Moksha is the goal, right? The whole point of our existence is freedom. Two types of moksha, Jivan Mukti and Videha Mukti. Jivan Mukti means in this body, in this life, we're free. What are we free from? We are free from a conditioned ahankar, number one, and we're free from the Arishadvargas, Kam, Krodh, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya. Because from this conditioning of the ahankar, being under the control of the Arishadvargas, everything falls apart. When the Arishadvargas are in control, when we are ruled by ahankar, that's when everything spirals out of control. So Jivan Mukti is when we have mastery over the Arishadvargas and our ahankar is purified. We have Atmagyan, knowledge, recognition, identity of ourself as spirit beings. That's the first type of moksha. The second type of moksha is Videha Mukti. Videha Mukti is after we die, after this body is finished, then the karma we have created in this life is also gone, dissipated, because it is karma which keeps us, right? Karma, when we engage in activity, we have to endure the consequences. This is the wheel of samsara. This is why we take one birth after the other to rid ourselves of karma. Once we've rid ourselves of karma, then we are freed from samsara. This is videha mukti, freedom from samsara. Excuse me. Now, this freedom from samsara, this videha mukti, which happens after death, this is the well, actually, I'll leave it at that, and I'll come back to that. That can be added to the next week's session. So just spend time reviewing this video, because all of the examination questions will be coming from this particular video. All right, and next week's video, part 2 of this review, these review videos. So if you have any questions, post them in the WhatsApp group. You can answer questions there. I'll answer questions there. Pay attention to what we're touching on in this particular video and next week's video as well. Any particular questions? Sahana vavatu sahana bhunatu sahaviryam karavavahai Jasvina vadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai Om Shanti 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 Om Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Hare. Everyone have a wonderful weekend.